Well, today I'll be continuing with my schedule discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing Central Florida. Central Florida last season did the best of all of the four new teams going to the Big 12 conference, mm, and all of them were new to the Power Five. And I think Central Florida has a good chance to have a pretty good season this year. Not to be like a possibility to win a national championship, but I think they could have like an 8-4 type of season this year. Last year, they only went 6-6. Their head coach, Gus Malzahn, is a good head coach. He's one of the better ones. He coached at Auburn before and almost won a national championship there. And Auburn isn't really the easiest place to win a national championship. It's not as hard to win there as a place like Central Florida, but still, it's much easier to win championships at places like Alabama and Georgia and LSU. And he did that uh, over a decade ago. And he also beat Nick Saban 3 times when he was at Auburn, mm, which that was pretty impressive. Mm, and they have added in a lot of transfers that look pretty good. They added a lot of good players on defense from the transfer portal I saw, and uh, they're bringing in a transfer quarterback from Arkansas. Now, I know that doesn't sound too comforting because of how bad Arkansas is, but he was the best quarterback that they've ever had. And I watched him play once. I was at a game when they were playing against Ole Miss a few years ago, and Ole Miss couldn't stop them. And I think that quarterback could do pretty well for Central Florida this year. Mm, and on this schedule, they start the season with 2 games in the non-conference that should both be real easy wins. They start Thursday against New Hampshire, and I didn't even know they had a football team, but they'll get the win. Uh, and then Sam Houston, which should be really easy also. And then they start their conference schedule mm, on the road at TCU. This will be a tough one. But Central Florida, I think, will have a good chance to win it. Really, Central Florida and TCU are the 2 teams in the Big 12 that I think could have a chance to uh, really surprise and maybe win the conference. I don't really think they have much of a chance, either one of them, to win the conference. But if there's going to be a team to surprise a whole lot and win it, I think it'll either be Central Florida or TCU probably. And then they take a week off before playing against the Coach Prime Colorado Clown Show. Not really a good time to take a week off. Would have been better to take it before TCU or before their next game after Colorado. They've got to beat Colorado. Or if they don't, I take back everything I just said about. I think they could have a pretty good season. And then they play their last non-conference game of the season on the road at Florida. It'll be their uh, Power Four opponent from the non-conference, and this will be a really tough one. Uh, Florida, I've said I don't think they're going to be very good, but Florida is a tough place to play, and Florida. I don't really think is going to be as good of a team as Central Florida, uh, but Florida does have a lot more talent on their roster. They recruit much better than Central Florida does, but they have a terrible head coach that can't develop the players, and Central Florida has a much better head coach. So I think Central Florida has a really good chance to win this one. Mm, and then they play on they play at home against Cincinnati. Cincinnati is probably even worse than Colorado. That should tell you how badly Central Florida needs to win this game. Mm, and then they play on the road at Iowa State. This will be really tough for Central Florida to win. It's not because Iowa State is probably going to be great, but uh, playing at Iowa State is tough. Mm, they uh, can really give good teams even problems. And then they play at home against BYU. BYU will probably be better than Colorado and Cincinnati, but I still don't think they're going to be very good. I think Central Florida's better probably and should win. Uh, but it is the type of game where you could see an upset. I don't. And then they play at home against Arizona, so Arizona is going to be a very tough game for Central Florida. Probably a loss, but I would give them a chance with it being a home game, even though Central Florida doesn't really have a great home field advantage. Mm, and then they play on the road at Arizona State. So Arizona State is completely different than Arizona. They're terrible like Colorado and Cincinnati. So they should be able to go on the road and win that one. They may be the worst team in the Big 12 this year, Arizona State. And then they play uh, at West Virginia after taking their second week off. And this is a pretty good time for a week off because the West Virginia is a tough place to play, and they're probably going to be a pretty good team, probably better than Central Florida. So likely a loss for Central Florida, but it is a kind of game to where Central Florida could pull an upset. And a week off uh, extra to prepare for it could help with that. Mm, and then they play Friday uh, at home against Utah. So Utah, I think, is going to be really good. They may be the best team in the Big 12, and it's very likely going to be a loss for Central Florida. But a lot of times with these Friday games, uh, the home team does win because you don't get as long to prepare for them, and the road team has to travel. So I wouldn't say there's no chance for Central Florida to win this one, but chances are very low. That's a really tough two in a row there at the end with West Virginia and Utah. The schedule isn't horrible. I've seen much worse, but there are plenty of tough games on here for Central Florida. And now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. So if you want to see more about how I do point spreads, you can watch my Ohio State video and I explain it more in that. But the games in the green are games where I think Central Florida will be a blowout favorite, so 20 or more points, and there's two of those, New Hampshire and Sam Houston. And then the games in the purple are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a touchdown, so 6 to 9 points. And there's two of those, Cincinnati and Arizona State. And the games in the pink are games where I think uh, they'll be favored to win by about a field goal, so 1 to 5 points. And There's two of those, Colorado and BYU. Uh, and the games in the gray are games where I think uh, Central Florida will be about a field goal underdog, so 1 to 5 points, and there's four of those: TCU, Florida, mm, Iowa State, and Arizona. And the games in the yellow are games where I think Central Florida will be about a touchdown underdog, so 6 to 9 points, and there's two of those: West Virginia and Utah. So New Hampshire and Sam Houston. Central Florida should be favored in both of those by 40 something points. And Cincinnati, think because it's at Central Florida, they'll be favored in it by about 6 points probably. Mm, but they'd be in the pink if it was a road game. And then Arizona State, I think Central Florida will be favored by about 7 in that one. Mm, and mm, Colorado, I think Central Florida will be favored in this one by probably uh, 4 or 5 points. Mm, and BYU, Central Florida will probably be favored by 4 or 5 points in that one also. And TCU, because it's a road game, I think Central Florida will probably be an underdog by maybe like a point, but they'd be favored, I think, if it was a home game. Mm, and then Florida, I think will be favored to beat Central Florida by probably around 3, uh, because it's a road game. If that was at Central Florida, I think would probably be favored. And Iowa State, I think will probably be favored to beat Central Florida by 4 or 5 points. Mm, and Arizona will probably be favored uh, mm, to beat them by around 5 points. Mm, that would be in the yellow if it was a road game for Central Florida. Mm, And West Virginia, I think, will be favored uh, to beat Central Florida by about 6 points, probably. That'd be in the uh, gray if it was at home. And then Utah, I think, will be favored to beat them by mm, about 7 points, probably. Mm, and that will be it with this video. And please subscribe, and thanks for watching. And I'll be back soon.